going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Hitman's Hotline podcast. I'm your host, Nick the Hitman Hart, and today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be talking about something that is very prominent in the sports world nowadays. Whether you like it, you don't, you've used it, you haven't, and obviously we're going to be talking about gambling in sports, and more specifically, online sports gambling, right? Over the past few years, we have seen online sports gambling take a massive jump in both legality and popularity, just with more states being able to legalize sports betting, and that has posed some problems, right? Mostly of which coming from users becoming addicted to sports gambling, how it's infiltrated sports media, but also we've seen some instances where professional athletes have been caught essentially cheating and gambling on themselves, and kind of desecrating what the games mean. You know, if you don't trust the games, how could you watch them and enjoy, right? So just for a little bit of background, this is an article from CBS News by Kiki Onstrawana, and she basically narrows down how big sports betting has gotten, right? So this is as of 2024, 38 states have had legal online sports books that have been legalized. And since 2017, so this goes back to, this is 8 years now, the first year, $4.9 billion in bets was placed in the year 2017. It's a lot of money. Fast forward to 2023, just 6 years later, $121 billion in bets was placed on online sports books. Or excuse me, not strictly, but $121 million was placed to sports bet, 94% of which dollars were placed online. And it's really interesting to see, right? It's crazy to notice just how big this has gotten. And the bigger issue now is that it's starting to turn over and trickle into the actual sport itself, right? You can go back as early as February of this past year. This is another article by Kiki on CBS News talking about Pat Hoiberg. So Pat Hoiberg essentially was fired by the MLB in 2024 because he was sharing a sports betting account with somebody under his name, and he's an umpire in Major League Baseball. And although he never, according to the article, he never bet on baseball itself, his friend did so 141 times between 2021 and 2023, including 8 bets on 5 games that Hoiberg umpired or was responsible for replay reviews. Not great. Not great at all. Another one that is quite alarming is actually one that happened just recently. The news came a few months ago, but the actual, I don't know if I'll say ruling, but the investigation has taken a turn, and now we see that in the MLB, Emmanuel Clase and Luis Ortiz are under fire for gambling-related scandals. This article by R.J. Anderson. He says that these two were found not guilty yet, but they were indicted on charges related to manipulating specific pitches for betting purposes. Now, obviously, that's a problem in and of itself, but it's a bigger problem for sportsbooks because now the MLB has announced that they will place a $200 limit on pitch level micro bets, meaning bets that are strictly about just one pitch, whether it's a ball or a strike, which is crazy in itself that you can bet on just that, right? It's mind-boggling that that's something that you can legally bet on a sports book nowadays. Now, it's nothing crazy new because, you know, a lot of teams are and media conglomerates are actually personally sponsored by the sports book. I don't know if personally is the right word, but Ted Dahlstrom of the Sports Handle basically put out a chart stating which teams are associated with which sports books. And you look at the chart, and there's not a single team on here, that single team missing, really. You look at FanDuel, which might be one of the the largest partners with actual sports organizations. DC United, Brooklyn Nets, Memphis Grizzlies, Detroit Pistons, Pelicans, Suns, Bulls, Raptors, Eagles, Bills, Broncos, Colts, Jets, Commanders, Browns, Bruins, Jersey Devils, Buffalo Sabres, Detroit Red Wings, Toronto Maple Leafs, New York Liberty, Connecticut Sun, Carolina Panthers. Did you get all that? Because that's all the different major league sports teams, or professional sports teams, I should say, that are sponsored by FanDuel. And based on this article, that is the biggest one-on-one partnership. There's some smaller ones on here, Bet Rivers, Bet365, Bally Bet Sports and Casino, which the Yankees are actually sponsored by. And it's crazy to see how the sports world has changed from looking at betting as something that was almost a little bit taboo to something that is so mainstream nowadays. And I actually sat down and spoke with the head sports editor of head football NFL sports editor of the USA Today, Joe Rivera, and kind of picked his brain about what it's like navigating that as an editor in today's day and age, how he manages the content, how he keeps things gambling related without actually going into the gambling itself. So we'll hear from Joe Rivera right now.
First and foremost, have you seen anything in your role with USA Today if changes with the way that sports gambling has affected sports? Like, have you guys covered anything differently or done any different sports related articles, like gambling wise?
Yeah, I think, the idea is you always want to go where the audience goes, right? I mean, that's the first rule of mass media. So, um, where there's opportunities to do more betting content, we've done it. So, whether that's like a Thursday night football best bets or like roundtable where we each select the best bet, or um a whole Sunday slate parlay that we've done, single game parlay stuff we've done. We automate certain betting content now. So listen, we know how big sports betting and gambling is now. So we've done a lot. We do a lot. That's something that we didn't. USA Today has done, but we've really put an emphasis on in the last year and a half, really, since I've had this team. So definitely more content than we had before.
Was that kind of a weird, I don't know if weird's the right word, but was that kind of a tough pitch to maybe some of the older, like hardcore J journo guys because of just kind of how taboo sports betting
Yeah.
was?
Yeah, absolutely. Like there's people who always look at this stuff with a side eye, right? Like um because there is a certain sense of, when you have a platform and you're put in this position, there's a certain sense of like moral obligation, right? And it's a vice. Gambling is a vice, and we know just on studies that are done and seeing people that gambling is very addictive. It can be addictive if it hits the right person, right? Or the wrong person, really. So yeah, I mean, people are always going to be a little sketchy when it comes to that stuff. I think the other part of it is like, you don't want your biases to come through your writing, and like how you always want to be fair and like the things that you're telling people to do, right? Like you're offering suggestions. Ultimately, it's up to them. They have a responsibility, a personal responsibility, whether or not they want to follow the advice, right? But there's definitely always going to be skepticism for people that haven't experienced this, that feel like there's no place for it. But again, it's when you're talking media and content, the biggest rule is to just go where the content, go where the audience is, right? You want to meet them to where they're going. So betting's just been a big part of that. So people have just kind of had to deal with it.
You talked a little bit about, the new school of people betting. Do you feel like it's almost more of an issue just because of how easy it is for people to access a sports book? Just they have to download an app and
Yep. Yeah, I think so. Like that to me is the scariest part of it. And I actually mentioned this in class the other day where your generation and my generation, right, are it's going to be easier for us for a number of reasons. Number one, tech is second knowledge to a lot of us, right? Like we have our phones, we grow up with smartphones. I barely remember a time when I didn't have a phone, period, right? So for people in my generation, it's just second nature. So going to your phone and just, like you said, downloading an app and making it accessible is an easy gateway, right? Where, I know I'm not making light of this, but if you want to do hard drugs, like you got to take the extra steps, right? Like obviously, if you're going to a liquor store, you got to show your license, like so it's easier for a lot of people. Number one. Number two, I think we have been exposed to it in different medium. And I mentioned this in class where I grew up on Pokemon cards, right? And buying a booster set of Pokemon cards is a game of chance. You're spending the $8 hoping that you're going to get cards that you don't already have, right? It's gambling. You're essentially gambling on what you don't know what you're getting. There's like in every pack you're going to get X amount of types of cards, but you don't know what the big card is going to be in that pack, right? So that, baseball cards is the same thing. It's the same deal. You don't know what you're getting in a pack of baseball cards. You don't know what you're getting in a pack of football cards. We have all sorts of blind boxes now, right? Like if you want to buy a bag clip to hook onto your backpack, you don't know what's in this bag, right? So you're spending $10 on a bag clip, not knowing what it's going to be. And that's, it goes back. So if you want to look at video games, even video games have elements of random number generation, RNG. And if you're playing Call of Duty, for example, if there's a certain weapon that you're looking for, an attachment for a gun or something in the game, and you have these, loot crates or the loot boxes, you don't know what's going to be, and it's all computerized, right? So like you keep playing until you get what you want, right? And that's just another form of gambling. So I think for us, it's easily accessible. We are more just given the advertising, given how widespread it's been, the legalization of it. Obviously, it's so pertinent in everything that we do. It's just pervasive. So it's tough to see like this generation kind of wrangle with that. But yeah, it's definitely it worries me about how accessible and in your face it is.
And you mentioned the advertising a little bit. That's kind of more of my focus on this is how
Mhm.
major sports syndicates and sports news outlets have become partners
Yep.
with sports books. Do you see any ethical dilemma there between, how sports betting used to be viewed and now these sports are partners with them?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the ethics behind it is as a publication, as an organization, whether you're USA Today or ESPN or whatever you are, the ethical part of it is saying you can't let this influence how you speak and how you report on things, right? Like that is number one with a bullet. There is no room for debate there. You have to be fair in the way that you approach all this, right? So I think that's the biggest thing. That again, that scares me a little bit. Now, if you're going to have shows where you have guys are talking about the spread and guys are talking about prop bets and things like that and player props, like that's not a problem to me, really, because you're just discussing what the sports books are putting out there. But when you start getting into how you cover a game or how you cover an athlete, or for example, all of the stuff that's happening now with the FBI and the NBA, and when you start letting that influence what you're doing, then it's a problem. Then it's a bigger problem, right? Because people have been talking about lines for years. People have been talking about. I mean, Al Michaels used to drop all sorts of gambling references to shtick. That's what he does. Brent Musburger is known for this too. And so anytime you used to watch a game when Brent Musburger used to call NFL games, um, and they would show the field before the game, right? You always see the quick pan, the camera pan over of the game. You see this field, you see the stadium, and Brent Musburger would always say, "You are looking live," right? And Brent Musburger didn't say that because he was bringing viewers in. He was saying that because he was signaling to the gamblers, hey, you're looking live at the field right now. This is what the weather is right now. This is why you're doing so. Like it's another little nod, right? So this stuff has been happening for years behind the scenes, or like it's a little wink, wink, nudge, nudge here and there. But um, again, I think the ethical part of it is as long as you're not letting gambling and sports betting and these sports books influence the way that you cover things, the way that you talk about things, then it's okay. But the second that it crosses into that territory is when you have a lot of problems.
Now, you brought up again like the FBI investigation with Chauncey Billups and Terry Rozier.
Yep.
Is it almost weird to look and see something like that happening and then seeing in the next breath a sports league is promoting, hey, that we're the official partner of
Right.
the NBA with FanDuel or something like
Yep.
that?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely weird, but I think the one area that I would say is like I'm a little bit on the opposite end of the spectrum is like at the end of the day, these guys are all grown men, right? Or grown people, grown human. Like they know what they are doing, right? It really is no different. And I understand it. All right, I shouldn't say it's no different, but it's advertising, right? Like if you like Abercrombie and Fitch, or you like Gap, or you like Banana Republic, like it's on me to understand how I'm using my money, right? And where I spend my money. I think it's the same thing with gambling, right? Yes, all of these leagues are in bed with sports betting agencies and different sports books, and I understand that part of it. But it's not like the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, hockey. They're not going to these athletes and saying, "Hey, we have these partnerships. Like you should go put money on." It's the opposite. They're saying you cannot involve yourself in this whatsoever, right? And these people are grown. They know the decisions that they're making at the end of the day, right? Like it really is no different from a league advertising with Pepsi or advertising with anything else, right? They are advertising a service. They are partners with these services. It's on the individuals to determine whether or not they want to use these services, right? So I think that's the one thing that people get a little mixed up with is like, oh well, the NFL is in bed with the sports books. It's hypocrisy at its finest. Like I wouldn't say it's hypocrisy because everybody still has a personal responsibility to say, well, I'm not going to gamble. I'm not going to drink a Pepsi. I'm not going to eat an Oscar Mayer hot dog, right? Like that's on the person at that point. So is it weird? Sure. It's definitely weird, like to see the advertisement and again, to see how pervasive it's gotten. But I do think that there is a high level of responsibility for athletes to say, all right, well, I'm not going to get involved with this because the repercussions for it can be fatal for personal, for your career, and for sport.
You talked about in class a couple of times just the different like scandals that have gone on in the past few years, I'd say probably 6 to 8 months, with whether it was the former MLB referee or umpire or the guys in the NBA now. You said you think it could be kind of the start of something bigger. Do you foresee a future where that could kind of overtake the spot, like the money brought in from sponsorships, and these leagues have to reevaluate this whole thing?
Listen, man, that is what scares me. And listen, this is not me talking from like inside knowledge, right? But that is what scares me more than anything because the second that you start to see more of these athletes and more of these officials or league representatives or whoever get more involved with these scandals and these things, like you are ruining the integrity of the game, right? Then you, as a viewer, you can't look at any individual player and say, well, can I trust you? Right? Like if CeeDee Lamb, shouldn't even mention a player's name, but if CeeDee Lamb drops a pass in a crucial spot and it's his 10th, it's potentially his 10th reception of the day, and his over under player prop is 9.5 receptions, right? Like, and he drops that 10 pass, you say to yourself, like, how can you trust it? Right? Like that's the dangerous part of it. Um, and that's why I think the FBI, Major League Baseball, NFL, anytime they have one of these investigations, they try and take it seriously because they say we cannot let the integrity of competition of the sport get in the way of all the gambling stuff, right? And again, they knew this when they got in bed with the sports betting and with the advertising and the partnerships, but they can't allow that to happen because the second that happens, you simply cannot trust it anymore. You can't. So that's why they take it seriously. That's why everybody should take it seriously when one of these players get caught. I still think my paranoia tells me is like there is more to come because it's hard for me to believe that this is isolated to, when you're talking about the thousands of professional athletes and not just the four major sports, but college sports. You're talking about, minor leagues in baseball. You're talking about anybody who wants to play a sport professionally one day, tens and tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands even, right? You can't say, oh, well, this is just isolated to, these 6 or 7 guys who have been caught up in gambling controversies. Like it's only isolated to them. That's what, the numbers, the statistics behind it, the logic just says that's probably not the case.
And then I feel like this kind of goes back to the whole ease of gambling. I feel like almost now, as compared to earlier in not earlier, but 10, 15, 20 years ago, it's almost easier for these players to do these things because you're not having somebody walk into a sports book and say, hey, I need X amount of money on this or X amount of money on that. Probably wasn't regulated then, but do you foresee that being an issue too of maybe the sports books themselves or the people that investigate not being able to track, like if it's a larger scale thing?
Yeah, I think like if it gets like I'm going to say the smart gamblers know not to leave a paper trail, right? Don't send a text message to your cousin Alfredo saying, "Hey, put $50 down on this for me because I got a feeling that I'm going to wink wink nudge nudge hit my under on my yards in this game," right? Um so I mean you would think, and I would believe, just given that the FBI is involved with this now and the way that sports books are seemingly taking this seriously, you would think that that is heavily, heavily monitored. It is easier for the athlete to say, again, you're not sending a text message to someone saying XYZ, right? The smart ones are going to just tell them in person, say, hey, consider this tonight because whatever, right? It's going, the ones who are really going to do it are going to do it, right? They're going to find ways around it. That's the way that addicts' brains are wired, right? We know this just from psychology and studies that are done. They're going to find ways to get it. They're going to find ways to do it. It's just a matter of how closely will the league, how closely will the sports books, how closely will they monitor this to make sure it doesn't get to that point, right? But yeah, it's a concern because you would think that the smart ones are understanding there are ways around it. It's just up to the leagues and sports book to make sure it doesn't get to that point.
And going back a little bit, you talked about obviously USA Today doing some types of betting articles and things of that nature. Do you guys have a specific guideline of how you write an article like that? Is it just picks? Is it just, hey, we think this is the best pick, or what's it like? What's the process?
There's all sorts of different stuff we do, right? So like I said, there we do roundtable stuff, which is we have a Sunday best bets file, which is all of the writers on my team give you like one best bet from the day, and we say, all right, well, I like this player's over 100 yards receiving, whatever it is, right? So we do those. We do sometimes you do specifically to like Thursday night football, and we say, hey, well, these are the best Thursday night football bets. And we all, the way that we format it, we have several like system tags, on the back end. This is kind of inside baseball, but we have system tags that say like, okay, well, we have to make sure that the sports betting widget is tagged, right? So that the second that we click that for the article at the bottom, it'll populate when the story publishes like, sports betting can be addictive, like call 1-800-GAMBLER, like all of that language there to try and, COA, right? Cover our own ass. So, there's all sorts of different stuff that we do for it, like the different formats, the way that we do it. We do automated picks, predictions, and odd posts. So that'll be, whatever the spread is, the over under, the money line, and those again get automated. We do picks against the spread every week. Like there's all sorts of different betting stuff that we do. So, yeah, it's not like one set in stone thing. Like again, I'd like to think that we are very ethical in the way that we handle it and the different ways that we protect ourselves against people potentially going back and trying to protect our readers too.
So it's not as much of like you're writing a game recap and you go, oh, the spread was this. It's more like that's its standalone stuff.
No, I mean, listen, if a team is, 7-1 against the spread, like that is an interesting bit of analysis, right? But I don't go into anytime I write something, I don't say, or anytime we write something, we don't say, oh, well, the money line was this heading into the game. There are times where we say, well, this team was favored entering the game. Like, that's fine. But like, we don't go deep into like the gambling talk when we're just doing recaps or analysis, stuff like that. Cause it doesn't fit because while Vegas knows things and Vegas knows things, a lot of things, right? It's just not, I don't feel like there's a place for that routinely. Right. And then that's when the second that you start dipping more into that side of things is when readers will start looking at you sideways, right? And they'll say, well, why are you mentioning this? Why is this like it creeps the doubt into their head of like, oh, well, they're clearly writing a lot about gambling, so there's a reason behind it, right? So we try not to again, there are ways that we do it. There's types of articles that we write and include it, but if we're like writing stuff, we typically don't reference it if it's not overly relevant.
And then almost in a sense, I feel like that's almost a different audience between who would be more interested in the sports betting stuff and then who was interested in just the cold hard, like, hey, X,
Yeah.
Y, Z happened.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a crossover, but it's growing, right? Like and it's only going to continue to grow as like it's continue as sports betting is continue to be legalized across the country, and these leagues continue to take it seriously, and partnerships with publications continue to grow, right? But yeah, I mean, if we're just talking traffic, like the traffic just for article like sports betting articles aren't always going to be as high as the rest of the analysis stuff, right? I'd like to think that there's still a lot more room for that side of things than like the sports betting things, but it's a growing audience like we've seen over the last year. So people are definitely interested in that content. Like we wouldn't do it if people weren't interested, but yeah, there's a crossover. It's healthy, but it's not over the top yet, I wouldn't say.
And last thing, just looking at the bigger picture of sports gambling across all major sports, where do you see it going? I mean, obviously we've seen it continue to grow. Is that going to be the case? How far does it grow? How big does it get?
Yeah. It's just gonna get bigger. Like I think I just kind of come to terms with it. Like it's gonna get to a point like any industry is like it's gonna get too big to fail, right? Any industry that rakes in money. I mean, Jersey was making, I think Jersey like over billions of dollars last year in sports bets, right? Like that people are just going to spend their money, and it's like any other vice, it's like alcohol, it's like smoking cigarettes, it's any other vice, really, marijuana, like whatever you want to call it, it's any other vice. So it's just going to keep getting bigger. Now again, my concern is like at some point you are going to have something that happens, and I think this FBI thing is just the tip of it. You are going to have something happens that's going to rock the sports world in a big way. I'm scared of that, and that's might be my own paranoia, but um until that day happens, until that day comes, this is just going to keep getting bigger. It's going to keep blowing up. I think, um, you guys, your generation, you're going to put the money into it. Like, even if it's $5, $10 on a bet, like that's whatever, right? That's, a Taco Bell lunch, whatever it is. But, um, and as you get older, like one of two things are going to happen. You're going to realize it's not worth it to keep betting, or people are going to keep betting a lot more, right? And they're going to put more and they're going to put more, right? So um it's just going to keep getting bigger. I don't know when that day is going to come, when the bubble bursts and people say, all right, well, maybe it's not for me. The government is another part of it. Like, will they find ways to regulate it more, especially with these sports leagues, because the government's never been afraid to get involved with the sports leagues when it comes to their rules and regulations and the things that they do, which is another part of it. um so it's just going to keep getting bigger, man. Like I think that's at the end of the day, that's as long as they're making money, it ain't going anywhere.
And when you say the bubble pops, you saying like a whole collapse of major sports leagues, or
Yeah, I mean, again, that terrifies me. Um, every industry has a point of satiation, right? Like you get to a point whether, it's Netflix, right? We'll just use Netflix as an example. Is the expectation for Netflix to have every person on the country on the planet have a Netflix subscription, right? Like it's just not reasonable. But they want as many subscriptions as they can. Is the expectation for sports bettors or sports books to have everybody placing bets, right? It's just going to get to a point where you're going to hit that point of satiation. And then what happens, right? Um, do they start pulling out of advertising? Do people keep spending money? There's so many questions that we just don't know moving forward. Um, Listen, if it ever gets to a point where again you have like the baseball survived Pete Rose all those years ago. They survived Shohei Ohtani and what happened with him last year. The NBA is going to survive whatever's happening now with Billups and Terry Rozier and the player's name escapes me from the Pistons last year, Malik Beasley. So they're going to survive, but again, I feel in my gut it's going to get to a point where you're going to have something that's more serious than that, and it's going to call into attention the integrity of sport, and that's something that no sports fan wants, because you can't doubt what you're seeing, and it's going to be dangerous for these leagues whether they want to admit it or not. So we'll see where it goes.
that's all I have. Appreciate you taking the time.
And Joe brings up another great example talking about the whole Terry Rozier incident. This is from a USA Today article by Mark Giannotto, kind of explaining what happened. Essentially, the FBI came and arrested Rozier in what would end up being a string of arrests from Rozier to Chauncey Billups, Rozier being an NBA player, Chauncey Billups being an NBA coach. And here it says Rozier is officially charged with conspiracy to commit wire fraud and conspiracy to commit money laundering. Basically being accused of an illegal betting scheme that alerted the authorities due to the amount of money placed on a certain prop bet of Rozier's. And it was a game that, from this article, says that's when he was arrested, Thursday, October 23rd. But he's being accused of basically faking an injury so that the under on a prop bet would hit. And that game was on March 23rd, 2023, according to this article, where the Charlotte Hornets and New Orleans Pelicans played. And it's crazy to see. You hope it's not something that's bigger. You hope it's kind of an isolated incident. But it's scary to think about. It's not something that you can really just brush under the rug. And these sports books and these leagues are going to have to take a really long, hard look at what they're doing and see if it's profitable for the future, if it's something that is going to cloud their sport, if it's going to ruin their sport. But we shall see. I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in to the Hitman's Hotline. As always, you guys can find this on YouTube as well as my website. Please leave the links down below. And make sure to tune in next time for the Hitman's Hotline podcast. Nick Hart signing off for now.